Hmm.
I'm using, my husband brought me my midwife mug. It says, "Do not make me use my midwife voice." I have a midwife voice for sure. Okay. So do you have any questions so far and what I've shared? And
It's just exactly what I thought and exactly what I was looking for. So just enormous thank you because um I'm going to try also to have the to have some interviews with some Obgyn to have them their point of view and see if they can say also the same. I don't know if they sign something to say no, we can see. Well, and think that is that when women make some echographies from the scar, what do they really see? The thing is that I think that's what they see is other tissues, not the uterine tissue. What do you think about that?
so, women or the doctors, the OBs? So the OBs, I think they're seeing scar tissue. Um, I think that like the last half of what I read from Williams obstetrics is speaks volumes. If the incision was not approximated or lined up properly, that's when we see bumps and the actual scar tissue. And one of the things we're having an epidemic here, I know in the United States, I think even in France, doctors are losing their dexterity. They're not as skilled in practice at sutures as they used to be. That's actually something that's been documented time and time again. I actually think that's why that entire section was removed from Williams obstetrics and in the newer books, because that set the doctors up for liability. One other thing that I want to say, since I'm talking about Williams obstetrics itself, and since doctors might see this or hear this, um, I let me turn off my ringer here. Um, I'm not opposed, not even slightly, and I don't blame doctors. I think there's hospital policies, there's insurances, there's malpractice insurance, there's hospital insurance, there's groups. There's all these people they have to respond to first. Um, but I'd like to point out, and if a doctor ever wants to challenge me side by side, would you please first get a newer model of the Williams obstetrics and an older model of the Williams obstetrics? And I want you to pick any section that's written in both. And I want you to pay attention to how it's written. The newer models, and I'm speaking to doctors here specifically, and the newer editions, not models, the newer editions of Williams obstetrics read like two things: a high school textbook, had a baby with a manual for insurance companies. And that's what the new textbooks read like. Where the old textbooks, the one I was just reading from, doesn't tell doctors how to think. It says, based on this histological, based on this research, so this doctor believed da 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 da. These doctors believe da 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 da. This is why this doctor believed da 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 da. Now it just tells you how to behave. Now it tells you what to do. Instead of reading like this is a highly intelligent human on the other end of this who can make their own conclusion, draw their own conclusions based on, their patients, it now reads like a malpractice manual, a policy manual, and a high school textbook. Don't think for yourself, this is the way we do it, this is why we do it. And then doctors end up regurgitating that over and over again. And then when they speak out about, hey, that doesn't kind of line up with what I'm actually seeing in the OR, they have the reverberation, the impact of their group, their malpractice insurance, their hospital policies, and all the different layers of people they're responsible to before they're responsible to their patient. And this isn't me coming after doctors. This is saying we have a system that is broken and is no longer turning to the doctor And when we do turn to the doctor, he or she has got so many people above them that they're answering to. And um, this should be a conversation we're capable of having. So we have a program. I don't know if you probably don't even know this about me, and I don't want to hijack your program. So Minnesota University, I still work with them. I still work with the doctors there. I work with a group of 20 other doctors in Minnesota. We have a program. We're just now developing it. We solidified it last year, and we're working on the legal paperwork as we speak. It's called Farm Biotrack, PharmBiotrac. And Farm Biotrack is a program in Uganda where we bring doctors from America and then take them to Africa, sit them down in the theater in Uganda and teach them directly. And they learn compounding biopharmaceuticals by going out into the field, collecting the plants, coming into the lab, and then making the pharmaceutical. Obviously, this is something that I need to work on getting out there in the world a little bit more. We're looking on, media and collections and all those things today. But imagine the difference we can make if we had that sharing of information and the sharing of experiences and the sharing of the communities, where we can now get that real hands-on experience without all the control we have here in the United States. Kind of putting that on the table there. I'm sorry. When I'm in Uganda, I've learned to handle so many things with my bare hands. The skills I attained as a midwife, because I was in a third world environment, I didn't have all this equipment to back me up. It was priceless when I practice here in America, especially when I do out of hospital births, which all of my births in America are out of hospital. I only work in the hospital when I'm actually in Uganda, and occasionally I'm allowed into the OR as a support person for a mom. So I've been in the OR several times, but it hasn't been as a practitioner, it's been as a support person. But I sure would like it if doctors invested that side, learned from other MDs, but widened their scope there in Uganda. It's fun too, by the way. We go on safari, we go in the, go into the market. It's a lot of fun. I love my trips to Uganda. Anything else I wanted to share with you today? Because that's kind of a lot. I kind of put a lot on your plate. I have lots to say about midwifery. Because I've learned of traditional healers for so long, like cholestasis of pregnancy, I'm 8 for 8. Well, I correct that. I'm 9 for 9. So I've had 9 cases of cholestasis transfer out of other practices and into mine, and 9 times we've been able to reverse cholestasis of pregnancy. We cannot keep referring to these things as incurable when someone like me can reverse it very, very fast. Herpes, like HSV1 and HSV2, we need a international network. Do you know how many times I've gotten rid of HSV1 and HSV2 in days without pharmaceuticals, without damage and harm to the baby? There are conversations that need to be had on a global stage. And I'm sitting here with all this information, all this knowledge, and all this experience, and no outlet. There's no one that's hearing me say these things. And I get banned on Facebook when I talk about it. I get banned on YouTube and kicked off all these other things and then shadow banned. But boy, wouldn't it be nice to build this information and build a network where we can talk with moms and share these things and other practitioners and give them the skills. What impact would it have if we gave these practitioners and their patients the confidence to birth vaginally? And what if we started practicing undisturbed birth, which is, have you ever heard of Dr. Sarah Buckley? I'm sure you have. Yeah. So I actually was, back when Dr. Sarah Buckley wasn't quite as big as she is today, I actually get to meet her in person at the Trust Birth Conference in 2012. Um, and so I feel like I studied at her feet and I engrossed myself in anything Sarah Buckley and Dr. Michel Ledant could put out. And so I practice undisturbed birth. I think it's the safest form of birth, hands down. And there is a way we can implement that in hospitals. We can have our cake and eat it too. We just have to be willing to try. Okay, so that's my final word. I'm opening myself up to anything you need to say and anything you want to express. I'm here.
Well, I've done two Paramanadula with Michel Audin, so yeah, I. Manuel, s'il te plaît.
Mais oui,
Quoi?
il y avait les poules chez le voisin, du coup, je suis allée seule.
Okay. Sorry, he was saying that our chicken were not in our garden, so so yeah, here too we used to, when we need it, we used to also kill our chicken, or so I understand clearly what you say. And so yeah, I also learned a lot of with him, with Michel Audin, and with Liliana Lemmers, who's for me the doula I would like to be. You know, she's just when I asked her if she would come and support me with my project. Well, I birthed my baby at that moment, but with this project that I had 3 previous cesarean and just wanted to stay at home. And she said, yeah, of course. I just forget the previous cesarean. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, okay, great. But you see, in France, the pressure, I think the pressure is coming also in Africa more and more. I have so many African women who are contacting me now from Senegal, from Djibouti, from Cameroon and Togo, etc. And they say in Djibouti, 1 cesarean, a cesarean forever. In Cameroon, if you have had 3 cesarean, you just can't have another baby. You stop. And well, in other countries, it's like, well, 2 cesarean, of course, it would be another cesarean. So yeah, we're trying to work also by distance because I can't go in Africa for the moment, but we try to work and just break those Western things that are coming in the countries. And
the true colonization of birth.
Yeah, this is it's like for Western women, try to connect back to their roots is just like a huge work because it's thousands of years ago. But for those African women, it's just like it was yesterday. Their grandmothers are just saying, stop, why are you going to hospital? Just stay at home. But modernity is just like, you have to stop breastfeeding, you have to stop home birth, you have to stop those things. And in Portugal, it's the same. It's just, I agree with the what you say, like creating a network, an international network, and connecting with people who just want to open eyes to lots of women and men too. Because of this, I think that's more and more all what we are told is just false. And we should just take this and consider the contrary to find the truth. You see what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen Breach Without Borders, right? So I've taken their course 3 times now. And I would like to see something VBAC related. I would love to lead that, by the way, just thinking that that would be my dream, to travel around the world teaching about the safety of vaginal birth after cesarean and actually being in, you know, the room and proving that it can be done. Yeah, it is getting more and more Western, but if you start looking at the real root causes, and I hate to go to an ugly place, but the textbooks are now written by pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies. And those medical textbooks are the textbooks that are actually being shipped overseas for free. And that's what the universities in other countries are learning from. That's what we're up against. Like, that's the real what we're up against. And I would love to sit down with OBs and discuss what they've actually seen in the hospitals, and what could we do to lower, to mitigate that risk that they're seeing. I would love, especially for those open mind OBs that, such as, I can't think of his name, does Breach Without Borders. It just left. I can
Dr.
think of.
Stu?
Yes, thank you. I can think of everybody else's name, but not his. But I would love to see more of that, but kind of on a more global scale. I haven't even asked him to do a podcast with me. I don't even think he knows I exist other than as a student. When I took his course, I may have met him in person, but in his course. And then Dr. Sarah Buckley, I haven't contacted her either. I think those are probably the next good steps there, is to contact people already doing the work and sharing my own work. There's just more to explore here, such as I've been working on creating an actual evaluation of those women that have had previous cesareans and what are their actual risk factors. Did you know that you're more likely to rupture being fully pregnant and not dilated than actually in labor?
Yeah.
That's when the uterus is under its most pressure, is, late term pregnancy, but without dilation. As soon as dilation starts to occur, the pressure on the uterus changes. And it all has to do with our mindset. We have that in America. We have the average woman has this idea that the cervix disappears. The cervix doesn't actually disappear. It actually kind of slides upwards and goes and kind of meets at the top of the fundus. All that muscle tissue just changes shape and it offers downward pressure. The cervix, the muscle there of the cervix, never disappears. It stays, there. But as soon as you dilate to a 4, that's statistical, between a 4 and a 6, the pressure on the uterus is no longer on the muscular tissue of the uterus. The pressure now is just in the cervix. So when you follow it through, even and talk about risk of rupture and actual, I should have included that earlier in my conversation. But the real risk is actually late pregnancy. More women rupture during the end of pregnancy before dilation occurs. The more dilated you are, the less risk of rupture there are. And by 4, the risk of rupture is almost nothing, which is why I feel very confident sitting with women for 2, 3, 4, 7 days is the longest I've sat with a woman laboring, just because exhaustion and whatnot. Oh, which brings me, that particular woman, we did end up having a 7th cesarean, but her first 2 cesareans were for, she went eclamptic, had seizures, had the headache. She went full eclamptic. And then, so here we are at home, it's day 5, and she starts getting signs of eclampsia, not just pre-eclamptic, she got eclamptic signs. And of course, I'm at home, and, I'm in a home environment. I'm, a little bit unraveling. But I immediately started with a urinalysis and saw that her urine pH was a 4. That's way too acidic. And then I carry herbs and tinctures and stuff with me on a regular basis. Quickly went and started to immediately address this woman's pH in her urine. I was able to stop her eclamptic symptoms within minutes, effectively. And if you start researching, this is how I got to this conclusion and was able to mitigate that and actually have it go away. There is a huge link between urine pH and seizures. So we would call it eclamptic because this is the condition it looks like when we're pregnant. Really, what I was addressing was her system had gone acidic. And I then gave her arrowroot and a little bit of jelly, mixed it up and kind of gave her arrowroot, and then followed it with constant grapes after that to keep her pH more balanced. Was able to balance and alter her pH almost immediately. She came out of her on the edge of a eclamptic state immediately and never went back to it. Not even when we went to the hospital, had a cesarean. And I learned to evaluate women. This woman had a history of becoming eclamptic, but she also had some other physiological symptoms without pregnancy that led to a more acidic urinalysis and more acidic conditions, and they end up being red flags for me. So now I know that if this woman is like this without pregnancy, I'm more likely to have eclamptic conditions during pregnancy. And I should be watchful of the pH in her urine. Kind of simple, huh?
Yeah.
It sounds, now if doctors are going to hear this, they're probably going to lose their ever loving minds, but it should be something in the consideration. And something as simple as arrowroot. I started using arrowroot for all my seizure clients. So people come to me with seizure conditions. I started checking their urinalysis and then started treating with arrowroot, and we're able to get rid of seizure conditions on a very large scale with just balancing the pH. So I learned a lot from this particular woman, but she did end up having a 7th cesarean. It wasn't traumatic. We walked into the hospital. The hospital in Missouri lost their ever-loving mind. It was the worst thing they had ever seen in their whole entire life, but nothing happened. Nobody hemorrhaged. Nobody died. The baby was fine, didn't need resuscitation. The mother was fine, didn't need resuscitation. I did a VBAC after 3 cesareans on a woman who was well over 400 pounds. First vaginal birth was at home with me after 3 cesareans. The baby was 11 pounds, 1 ounce. And I would love to teach about that. What did I learn? I learned so many things from attending this birth because, one, I had never attended a birth of someone that's heavy. She talks about her birth. She did a podcast about her birth, by the way. And it was a beautiful, fantastic birth. It was just amazing. I couldn't find fetal heart tones with my equipment the entire pregnancy because there were some fat blocking between me and the baby, and it was difficult to find fetal heart tones. And so I told her, well, I'm not going to be able to assess your baby because I'm having a difficult time assessing your baby during pregnancy. I'm not going to be able to assess your baby. So what's going to be important to me is, I'm be watching for physical signs. We had a beautiful vaginal birth, but there was some anatomy changes. When mom got on her hands and knees, the structures below changed. I encountered a lot of things that I'd love to be able to teach on, like what to expect from, a very plus size woman's vaginal birth. There were things to consider there that I hadn't considered before. But if we don't break out of the shell that we're in, we're never going to learn anything. We're going to only keep going more and more medicalized. And her previous cesareans had been because she was obese. That's the reason. And I tried to have a VBAC with a particular woman who was 380 pounds. During her attempted VBAC, her blood sugar spiked, and it got out of control. That particular one got out of control. I followed her to the hospital. We went to the hospital. I was allowed in the OR. This is in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And it was the most, traumatic thing watching a cesarean on a very heavy woman. There were extra people, lots and lots and lots and lots of extra people pulling back her skin. There were a lot more layers to get through. And then when people were retracting her abdominal fat and her abdominal muscles, the weight of those people holding all of that back, and those weights were on the baby. Like all of that excess weight was just compounded right there on top of the baby. And the baby did have issues. The baby didn't have issues before we went into the OR and did develop issues in the OR. And the issues the baby developed looked very much like it had a car accident. Like they were just very, very, took them 2 or 3 minutes to resuscitate baby. She was in the NICU for a month. There was a whole lot of things involved there. But I was left with this trauma in my mind of like, wow, cesarean was not safe for her. I wish that we had been able to keep her blood sugars under control, and that was a whole conversation in itself. Mom's diet was not what I was expecting it to actually have been. When I got there for the birth, there was just treats everywhere. And that was on me. I mean, I should have I don't know what I should have done. We should leave what I should have done there. But I definitely believe that mom and baby would have been so much healthier birthing vaginally. It would have been so much less traumatic for mom and baby if we had had blood sugars under control and if we had done a vaginal birth. And that's why I was willing to attend the woman who was, well over 400 pounds. That's why I was willing to do that, just because it was so traumatizing watching a cesarean of a heavier woman. And what is her name? I have her book sitting here. Oh, what is her name? I can't think of her name right now. She wrote basically Plus Size Birth. I just read it too, and I can't think of her name right now. Oh, I've met her in person too. Okay, I'm gonna have to leave that alone because otherwise I'll get kind of caught up in that. Keep wanting to say Sarah, but then Sarah Buckley comes out, and that's not it. Okay. I'll message you if I think of her name in the book. But there's a lot of research in there that they're just women and they can birth. And I have videos of this mom, of this VBAC after 3 cesareans that was over 400 pounds birthing. Oh, it was phenomenal. It was really phenomenal. There was different risk factors that I didn't anticipate ahead of time. And I was also concerned before the birth that I wouldn't be able to assess the uterus, like check fundal, make sure she wasn't, if she started to bleed, how was I going to, address that effectively without being able to get the pressure on it that I needed. What I didn't consider before that birth was I wasn't going to have to worry about that because her abdomen was putting enough pressure on that uterus to cause it to contract. So we actually had almost no bleeding after that birth. It was phenomenal. It was just amazing the things that I learned during that particular birth. Okay. I feel like I've gotten off topic, and I appreciate you letting me get off topic a little bit. I mean, she was a VBAC after 3 cesareans. And her healing after, she said the baby was born and she wanted to get up and go do things. Like, you still just had a baby. You still need, rest for a week. And the biggest problem I had after her vaginal birth was she was just alive and wanted to go clean the house and take care of the kids and go to the store. And I had to convince her she really did just birth a baby. And the recovery after vaginal birth is just so much better than the recovery after a cesarean. She and I've become really close friends. So she actually caught her water breaking underwater on camera. She said she was feeling pressure, so she wanted to use her camera to see what the pressure was she was feeling. And so she put her camera, it was waterproof, she put her camera underneath, and she caught the exact moment her bag of water ruptured underwater on her own camera. She caught it herself, and it's one of my favorite videos. It's like, and the baby was born 4 hours later. So vaginally, it was kind of cool. So any specific questions you want to ask me?
Ooh, I think that we could talk hours and
all day.
hours. Yeah, of course, because I think that we have the same passion for this subject. And well, I don't know if it's Rachel Reed.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, Rachel Reed. Yeah. Yes. Well, when I was pregnant with my 4th, just a week before that day for my scheduled cesarean, I had I don't know the word in English. It's not a rupture of the bag. It's just a
high leak.
Yes. And so I was like, I feel safe at home. I don't want to go to hospital. And then a friend just sent me an article from Rachel Reed about rupture, and so I didn't read it. Just the fact of knowing that I had this article was just, okay, I'm fine. I can stay at home. So I stayed a week, more than a week. Yeah, a week and a day, I think. And with this, and yeah, I know that if I went to hospital, it was just another cesarean, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, it was also something that I wanted to share with women, because usually we do not have the proper information about the water bag. And so usually you go to hospital minutes after, or well, 1 or 2 hours after, and you have antibiotics and everything, but it's not necessary.
Not even close.
Mm.
I actually sent an article today from Gloria LeMay called Membranes Released Before Sensations Begin, What to Do, Wise Woman Way of Birth. So Gloria LeMay is my personal mentor. Like I call her frequently, and if I ever have a birth that I'm caught up in and I'm caught up in my head, sometimes I'll call her to get released from, the frustration. I've had women that have had their water ruptured. Oh, this is actually a VBAC after 5 cesareans. Would you like to hear that story real quick and then we'll kind of move on? I'm sorry, I could tell stories all day.
Yeah, sure.
So this mom came to me after her water bag had ruptured. I had never met her before. She heard that I did VBACs after high numbers. And this is her normal case, 31 weeks, her water ruptures, and then they rush in, do a cesarean, and they have a premature baby. And then the baby lives in the NICU for a month, and then they get to take their small baby home. And that's her MO. That's what happens to her every pregnancy. And so here we are 5 pregnancies in, and this is what's happened between 31 and 32 weeks. Her bags of water rupture. Labor doesn't begin. Cesarean. She doesn't even dilate. She just water ruptures and that's it. So here she is, 31 weeks. Her bag of water ruptures, and someone says, don't go in and do that. Call Gwendolyn Posey. I get this weird call in this massive panic. And I was like, it's okay. Like, wait, like, settle down, calm down. What are we doing? Are you in labor now? No. Okay. And then I had her make something I called OGG. It's onion, garlic, and ginger and organic sugar. And I consider it an antibiotic. It's actually high in quercetin and zinc, and I can explain why it's an antibiotic, but we don't need to get in that right now. I have her make this, and I have her taking it 4 times a day, checking her temperature. The instructions of nothing vaginal, no baths, no sex, no checking dilation, nothing. She carries her baby an additional 7 weeks. And I mean, it was ruptured, like it. And when she finally does go into labor, she has her first vaginal birth, VBAC after 5 cesareans, in her bathtub with her and her husband. I wasn't even there. I didn't take her on as a client. I book up well in advance. So I was completely booked. And, I didn't really know this woman. I just kind of helped her through a couple of things. And, she went on to have an unassisted birth, a VBAC after 5 cesarean. I was actually in Iowa catching twins when she went into labor. So I was out of the state even. I'm in Oklahoma. And so I was actually in Iowa catching twins. In Iowa, they have this weird, ridiculous law that twins can't be born at home with a midwife. And so I might have, I didn't actually catch them. I just kind of witnessed. Anyway, that's another conversation. But she actually had a VBAC. I had another mom, 10 days. Oh, and the one I told you about, the VBAC after 4 cesareans to end up in a 5th cesarean, the heavier woman, her water broke at 14 weeks, but she didn't miscarry. It broke again. It resealed. I mean broke, but it resealed. Broke again at 24 weeks. No, 21 weeks. And then it broke again at like 36 weeks or 37 weeks. And she ended up carrying 42 weeks. I was on pins and needles that entire pregnancy, just not sure whether this pregnancy was, it was a crazy time in my life. Those are the times I'm like, midwives are not paid enough for this net. Because we walk on eggshells. We're, constantly concerned and constantly, considering all the variables on a regular daily basis. Have you ever heard of Patricia Edmonds?
No.
Okay. So Patricia Edmonds is, she has passed away now, but she was a midwife in the United States who we consider here in the United States to be a placenta expert. Like she studied the placenta inside and upside and downside. She just studied everything about cord and placenta and perfusion and all of the things. And I studied under her for a little bit, learned all I could from her. But I was at a mom, her waters had ruptured. We're at 10 days post and we're kind of monitoring it. And the mom calls me and says, there's something hanging out of me. I was like, what's hanging out of you? And there was this long, she said, there's this long tube hanging out of my body. And she says, and I pulled it. Why did you pull something hanging out of your body? Ended up being a rolled up piece of amniotic sac. And now I'm freaking out because a piece of her amniotic sac came out. Like, I've never heard of waters rupturing and then some of the amniotic sac coming out, but the baby's still inside. And so I call Patricia Edmonds. I'm all in my head and all nervous and worried, like, oh, what's the risk of infection? I'm just kind of going crazy about it. And, Patricia says to me, she says, what was that bag of water doing? Was it holding back the fluids anymore? I was like, no. She goes, so what was its purpose now? I don't know. She goes, so what did it came out? So what did it came out? I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I'll sit back down and calm back down. Mom went on to have a perfectly beautiful vaginal birth at home. Perfectly healthy baby, no infection, no nothing. Just that easy peasy. So, oh, that brings me to a real quick conversation since I have a little bit of an audience right now. Do you know what one of the things we should be doing with our amniotic sacs, the amnion and the chorion? I do something called stimming. I repair vaginal tears with pieces of amniotic sac. So some midwives will use nori, like the seaweed. The same way that you would use the seaweed, I use a little strip of the amniotic sac because there's stem cells in there, and it's bioidentical. And I've had moms go to pelvic floor therapists after they've recovered down there, and they said that there's a lot less scar tissue and damage than there is when you put in sutures. Isn't that kind of crazy? So speaking of stem cells and amniotic sacs, we aren't tapping into the miracle that women are. And we have women so fretting over and fearing birth so much. We're not balancing that with, and you're miraculous. And you are phenomenal, and you've got this. And what would that look like if we approached birth as if nothing's wrong here? And it's meant to balance itself in the long run. And what would that perspective on the world be? Okay. Yeah. My clients, my first appointments for the day are here, so I do need to let you go. But
thank you.
I thank you for this.
It was just great. Thank you. And why not making another conversation if you want anyway, because I think that, yeah, we have lots to discuss.
Oh, I have so much to share. I would love to share further, basically my projects in Uganda, and how could we take this information, at least make it available to moms and those practitioners that are willing to have an open mind. And I'm not afraid of a little debate, by the way. So if there's ever an OB who would like to debate me, I'm not going to hide from it.
I'm going to make an interview with Dr. Stu next week, so we'll see.
Okay, that would be wonderful. And if you ever run into Dr. Michel or Dant, tell him that definitely a fan. And I practice, the way he and Dr. Sarah Buckley practice with undisturbed birth. I think that they were really onto something, and that's the difference between a safe birth and a non-safe birth. They were right.
Yeah. Well, I think that we have less than 1 minute, so it can cut anytime. So thank you again. Really,
thank you very much.
A wonderful moment. Thank you.
Okay, and if you could send me the recordings, I'd appreciate that too.
Yeah, I'll do. Yeah, I'll do. We'll make you some message.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Bye-bye.